Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so I haven't had a real actual Laker video in a while, but I think I'm ready to get into it. Um, Something that Trevor Lane just said on his program that I thought was very interesting. And essentially, what he was saying was he thought that Jared Vanderbilt probably wasn't someone anyone would want right now because he hasn't been seen on the court in a year and because of his contract, which I mean, logically makes perfect sense. That's like the main thought that I think most people will have. But what he had just got through talking about on his content was how Zach LaVine is playing his value up to such a high degree that people are starting to wonder if they should have traded for him when he was still someone people thought would likely be injured a good portion of the time. And I think that's really what there is to see. If you're using Zach LaVine as a measuring stick for whether or not you should target players that have been injury prone, who may be on their way back on contracts that may be fluctuate from good to not good at all, this is the perfect time to see it as reasonable for you to buy low on guys who have been injured because Zach looks as good as he does right now. So when you talk about the Bruce Browns of the world or the Jared Vanderbilts of the world, or maybe some other pieces that we haven't seen in a while, like Malcolm Brogdon and players like that, I think the presence of Zach LaVine playing so well after having such a bad trade market makes you wonder if you can duplicate that type of success if you're a GM. I think if ever there was a time, an environment for which someone may be willing to try to take a player like Vanderbilt from us, it might be the era we're in right now, where Zach LaVine is playing his best ball after coming back from a year's injury. So that's what I wanted to say. I think that, now I'm not saying that I see this in the tea leaves, or I'm not saying that that's going to be a good science to follow. It may not be a very good science at all. When you consider Zach LaVine, he's a freak athlete. Uh, You know what I mean? That's the key to that. The genetics there are different. So I think that probably is what accredits to most of what we're seeing. And if that isn't taken into account, I think some people could be buying lemons. But when you look at the type of player Vanderbilt is, he's the type of piece that can change your defense entirely. He can turn a bad defense very good if he's utilized correctly. He's a limited player on the offensive end, and I'd say he's limited in some defensive areas too. But if you slot him where he's supposed to be, he can be one of the best defenders in basketball. Think putting Drew Holiday at the center position. One of the best defenders in the world. But can he defend any centers? Probably not very much success going on there. So that's kind of how I look at Vanderbilt. You put Vanderbilt where he needs to be, and all of a sudden he's one of the most elite defensive players in the game when healthy. Now, do you want to wait for Jared Vanderbilt to come back, reestablish himself as that, and then pay the price that comes with that? Or do you want to get him now while his value is lower because he's been out for a long time, and then bring him to your team and hope that he proves what Zach LaVine is proving right now? And so that's the big question for the field. And for the Lakers, do you move Vanderbilt right now while he's in a buy low area of value? Or do you see if you can play his value up to Zach LaVine's status or something like that, and then try to move him when his value is high? So that's what I want to ask everybody. I don't really know what the right way to go is. I'm just saying that when you have the presence of certain things working out a certain way, it makes it more likely that people will invest in duplicate matters such as that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm like, this might be the best time to try to move some of these injury prone dudes. This might be the best time to buy on those guys too. And so I don't know if the Lakers would be interested in thinking about that. I don't know if anybody would be moving for in the direction to pick up players that are injured, especially in this collective bargaining agreement. But I think just the same, when you're talking about trying to find a discount on talent that's going to get a lot better or balloon from where they're at, that's probably the exact type of move you might consider wise when you have a locked up collective bargaining agreement. That might be exactly what you need to be looking for. So I think the Lakers may be able to find some interest in Vanderbilt. It's probably a lot of buy low thinkers out there. They probably ready to give us a bunch of trash for Vando. But if you think his contract is going to continue to be one that's sitting on your books without any production attached to it based on injury, maybe it's wise to move him now before he get injured again. 3 years on his deal. Because, of course, that's the other way it can go. You pick up a player like that and then they bottom out and not ever play for your team. That's the risk. So, as it's a risk for the team that picks him up, it's also a risk for the team that retains him with the intention of raising his value or just holding on to his contract entirely. So that's what came to mind, man. Vando's imminent return is amongst us. We are going to see him probably within the next 3 games. That's my rough estimate. I haven't heard anything, but that's what the tea leaves are showing me, especially with the extended postponements of these games based on our fires in LA. Prayers out to everybody affected by those. And be safe. But, that's what it comes down to. I think that creates more of a window for him to continue to work his way back onto the court and be back maybe sooner based on the spreading out of the schedule. So, yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Will we see Vando soon? And if so, can he play up his value? And if so, does someone want to have him now? Or are they going to wait till the trade deadline where he's fully healthy and his value could potentially raise up? Hopefully fully healthy. Knock on wood. So, yeah, that's what comes to mind, man. And then, I was listening to Los Angeles Lakers Network, a program that started by Sean Davis. I really like that he came through for the city of LA with a nonprofit, a charity event, I guess is what it's called, a charity event that he did yesterday. And I really appreciate those guys, everybody who's thinking about LA and trying to help folks out there who are dealing with that, especially if you're not affected by that and you're in other states. That's dope. But I was watching this program yesterday and they were talking about Jared Vanderbilt potentially being used as a small ball center, and that JJ's vision for him is kind of asking him to guard bigger players like Jokic. And I think this is what happens when you have a new coach coming in to a situation that's existing. Team, personnel, fans already know what to expect with certain things. Coach may not. And so I think JJ, we've seen this kind of happen in certain other situations. He did that with the D'Lo Austin thing. We knew that didn't work. He had to see it for himself. And I have a feeling he's going to want to do the same thing with Vando, running him in small ball situations, asking him to guard bigger players. And he's going to find out it doesn't work. I want JJ to hear me when I say he doesn't guard big players very well. As we discussed, it's like putting, Jrue Holiday on centers. Not necessarily the same thing, of course, because of the length and the size. It's not literally the same thing, but it's like you're gonna neutralize what makes him a great defender by putting him on people he cannot guard. He can't guard bigs. He's probably best on your Brandon Ingrams, Jason Tatums. Maybe you have him running around with guys like Jordan Poole. Maybe even De'Aaron Fox in certain cases, depending on his conditioning. And when he's conditioned right, he can chase the little guys around. But right now, I'm putting him on wings. Wings. If the guy's 6'5" or bigger, Bradley Beal, all the way to Kevin Durant, I'm having him guard that kind of dude. I'm not putting him on Jokic. I'm not putting him on Wemby. I'm not putting him on Sengun. Those guys, they eat his lunch. It's not a problem. Put him on Luka the Don, even though Luka cooks him. But that's your best bet. Just putting him in those situations. And I think that's the same thing I feel about Dorian Finney-Smith too, but in an inverted way. Never put him on De'Aaron Fox. Never put Dorian on Tyrese Maxey. Put him on Brandon Ingram. Put him on Jason Tatum. Put him on Jaylen Brown. And you may be able to put him on some centers that maybe you don't want to put Vanderbilt on. Not Jokic, but maybe I let him switch on to Sabonis a little more than I would anybody else. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. Vanderbilt shouldn't be asked to guard fives and big fours. Dorian shouldn't be asked to guard quick ones, in my opinion. Slower ones, yeah. Twos, we're getting there. Threes for sure. Fours, yes. Threes and fours mostly. For both of those players, in my opinion. Vanderbilt more so, swing him down to twos, more comfortable twos, threes, and some ones. And less fours, and definitely not really most fives. So that's my take on that. You got great swing men for defensive wings. Two of them who are going to be great so long as you put them on the right people. And when we go up against the Boston Celtics or the OKC Thunder, I think those two players make us capable of legitimately having talent that can be thrown at their best players, because they're all 6'9" and all ball handlers and stuff like that. Those are the people I want Dorian and Vando to be on defensively. And if we get them in their best shape, which is most important for both of those players, we got to get Dorian in better shape. After watching him for the first 2 games, he's just not in the shape he needs to be in right now. Being in Brooklyn, that he wasn't taking that as seriously because they weren't really a winning franchise. He needs to get in fantastic shape by the end of the season, and I hope that he's changing his diet and spending more time in the gym and getting rest. Dorian needs to get in shape. Then we'll see a better Dorian than what we've been seeing. But Vando, of course, coming back from injury, conditioning is everything for him. So we need to not ask them to do things that are going to get them injured or re-injured, because if you don't have those pieces, you're back to being a bad defensive team and ultimately very shallow. So that's what I want to say. I think the Los Angeles Lakers got the right idea, though. I love having both of those players on this team. The potential of what they can be on paper defensively is special. Being able to switch them out when one's on the floor, the other can get some rest. If one gets in foul trouble, you still got another one. All of that, it makes us a different team when we get them both healthy at the same time. And hopefully by March, they will be that. And I just don't want to waste games so that JJ can learn things that we've already learned. That's really what it comes down to. We've already learned that Vanderbilt's not a good defender at the center spot. We already learned that. He gets cooked by Jokic just like any non-defender. Like he might as well not even know how to play defense when it comes to guarding people in the paint that are big. It's the same result as anybody else trying to guard Jokic. You know what I'm saying? That's not your answer. So that's what I want to say. I think the Lakers, I don't think Vucevic is an answer for Jokic. I don't think Vucevic is an answer for, Sengun. I don't necessarily think he's going to have a whole lot of success against Wemby or Chet Holmgren when he gets back. None of those type of centers. I don't see that necessarily being his role. But he can put so much pressure on those guys to defend him and allow for Anthony Davis to kind of focus more on the defensive end. And even though AD can't guard those people either, if he doesn't have as much offensive responsibility, he's a glass eater extraordinaire, as we already know. And he doesn't really love the offensive end like that. Anthony Davis score for you, but you can't count on him to give you the big scoring nights. There are going to be nights where he goes for 12 points. We know that. So for me, I want my front court solidified with an interior two-way center. But if I can get Vucevic on this team, I think his offense is his best defense. And because we have such an amazing Anthony Davis defensive piece and the Dorian and the Vando coming back, it may be able to offset some of the lineups that allow for more offense while we're focusing on keeping our defensive players on the floor. If I got Vucevic on the floor, I can afford to have Vando and Dodo on the floor at the same time at the 3 and the 4 spot and still have Anthony Davis rest or have foul trouble or just not be out there at all for injury. So that's why I'm thinking, you get me a real offensive center, I got the players that are going to be connective enough defensively to where the only open player is going to be the center with the Vucevic piece not being able to defend. Because you got Christie down there, you got Dodo, you got Vando, and maybe you can put like a Gabe Vincent if you don't trade him away. You'll be able to defend everything but the center, and that makes life significantly harder for that center. And then you're making that same center have to either be hidden on defense in a way because Vucevic is attacking him and so is AD and Bron. Now you got so many more opportunities to make that center work in ways that you don't right now when you have a Jackson Hayes on the floor or Koloko on the floor or AD who's not necessarily scoring, although he's usually a huge threat for these people. You put Vucevic down there, now you're talking about foul trouble for Jokic, foul trouble for Sengun, foul trouble for Rudy Gobert and these guys. So that's why I think Vucevic could be a potential plus, even though he can't defend. Because now we have so many defensive players that are not connective pieces making games better for other people. That gives you a target, a passing target that you can get the ball to in the paint. He could score. He's shooting 40-something% from the three, according to what was just shown to us on that content I was watching. So, he's going to stretch the floor just like Dorian is, make it so that Vando's a bit less needed to shoot in order to spacing to make sense on the floor. So it's just a lot of things that I think Vucevic can help you with defensively by just being a threat offensively. It allows for you to feel more confident that you can get scoring on the floor with your defensive lineups if you let him be the player on the floor with those lineups. And so that's why it's like, in my mind, I think that makes a little more basketball sense now than it did before we made the Dodo trade, because now you have a player in Dodo who you don't look to for any offensive or defensive stats or rebounding stats, but just a player that does the things that don't show up in the box score. He gives us production that should show up in the box score and allows for us to live without the production that the absence of D'Angelo Russell ultimately gives us. So that's what we need to fulfill. You got rid of a guy who should be able to give you scoring, should be able to make passes, for a guy that you don't ever look at the box score if you want to be impressed. But the production that comes with that is now gone, and you need that production back. So I think Vucevic can help with continuity a little bit. He can pass a little. He's not a bad passer at the center spot. He ain't Jokic or Sengun, but he can do his thing. So that I think gives you easy buckets, and a 250-pound center down there, 200, 200 something like that pound center. That's legitimately very difficult to guard from both the perimeter and the interior. So I think at $20 million a contract, if you move in Rui, I don't love moving Rui, but you're bringing in a bigger player that probably utilizes more of what you need. Like I said, I don't love moving on from Rui, but now we have Vando coming back and Dodo. So what's Rui's role? So it's like it becomes a little tricky to envision what the team looks like with Rui now that we're bringing back Vando and have Dodo. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you probably need a center more than you need another 4. And so that's what it really looks like to me. So that's what I wanted to say, man. That's kind of the essence of my thought. We still have some things to do, to circle around and figure out. I respect that Zach LaVine is playing some of the best ball in his career, and that maybe if that would have been something that we cared about beforehand, we probably missed out on an opportunity to have him do that in our uniform. So those who were saying go get Zach LaVine about a year ago, they look like geniuses right now. But this ain't the time that really matters when considering the contract. It's when he opts in 2 years from now. Opts into a $49 million contract. Is he still who you want him to be then? That's what you're really wondering. But he's playing great. Ain't nobody gonna argue about that here. So yeah, man, that's the thought. That is the thought. I'm actually pretty glad the Lakers don't play tonight. I'm still not quite ready to do everything I need to do to be ready for this, but I'm getting back there. That's really what this video was about, to show you guys that I have been thinking about the team a little more than the Fires. You know what I mean? And then in the last couple of days, the healing process for myself is in full effect, and I respect that there are other people in the city who are still dealing with that in a very real way, man. So far be it from me to think that we're all ready for basketball. I don't think we are. In fact, I know we're not. There's still people evacuating as we speak. Prayers out to them. So, yeah, man. I'm all for the Lakers playing ball when it makes sense for the city. That's really what it comes down to. So, that's pretty much what I got to say. My name is BDF44. I thank you all for watching. Out.